Day after day, month after month, for some 20 years, the people of Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Romania, and Bulgaria have been getting one long commercial selling the virtues of communism, and they still haven't bought it. They still want, and are working toward, their personal freedom and national independence, and rightful role as members of a free European community. Helping them to achieve their goals are the day and night broadcasts of Radio Free Europe. Radio Free Europe is their window to the West, a window through which they get a clear, undistorted view of the world and their place in it. Radio Free Europe, a private, non-profit American broadcast operation, concentrates all of its efforts on helping communist-ruled people choose the kind of society they want. Of all the areas in the world dominated by communism, why does East Europe merit our special attention? First, because it is the moral obligation of free people to assist those living under oppression. Oppression that does not permit free elections, free assembly, free religious observance, free press. And secondly, it is in our own interest to encourage an independent spirit in East Europe, a spirit that doesn't blindly follow the dictates of Moscow or of any foreign power, a spirit seeking gradually closer ties with the West. Strategically located, East Europe, with its vast resources, stands between the free world and the USSR. East Europe has formidable military power. The standing armies of East Europe are equal to the total combined armies of Great Britain, France, and West Germany. East Europe produces far more of the things with which wars are fought than the whole of Red China. East Europe has a 5-2 advantage over Communist China in the production of steel, chemicals, oil. East Europe outproduces Communist China 2-1 in electrical power. In the production of coal, they're about even. From scientific ability to the manufacture of weapons, East Europe is potentially a greater threat than Red China. Fortunately, this threat is undercut by the unwillingness of East Europeans to follow blindly communist dictates. Dictates Radio Free Europe is helping to weaken by serving as a free press, keeping East Europeans informed. RFE is a prime mover in the political, economic, cultural, and social lives of the East Europeans. RFE puts the record straight on matters the communists blanket with silence or distance. RFE provides the information and the moral support needed for East Europeans to continue their quest for individual freedom and their rightful role in a free European community. To accomplish its objectives, Radio Free Europe has put together a dedicated, hard-working team of exiled East Europeans, West Europeans, and Americans. Announcers, political experts, actors, musicians, producers, researchers, writers, and one of the most authoritative and efficient research and news operations in the world. Each news item and fact broadcast is checked and rechecked for accuracy. Political experts, writers, students, and researchers throughout the world call upon RFE's vast, accurate store of information on East Europe. Each day, almost 1 million words of news, as many as are in both the Old and New Testaments of the Bible, flow into Radio Free Europe's central newsroom at its headquarters in Munich, Germany. News forms the backbone of RFE's broadcasts. It is received from major free world news services and RFE's own news bureaus in New York, Washington, D.C., the United Nations, and 10 principal West European cities. To find out just what the communists are telling the people, RFE listens in on more than 50 communist radio stations. Key programs are recorded and transcribed for analysis by RFE political specialists. RFE also monitors communist wire services and reads and evaluates over 700 newspapers and publications a month to stay on top of the propaganda being disseminated by the communists and developments in Eastern Europe. The news is edited and prepared for broadcast. Radio Free Europe's more than 22 million regular listeners rely on these news programs, broadcast every program hour, to get the true picture of international, national, and local news. News that can and does affect their lives and attitudes toward their communist rulers, as well as the free world. Approximately 1/2 of Radio Free Europe's programming time consists of news, information, commentary, and review of the world press. The remaining half consists of music, religion, and special programs designed to appeal to all segments of society: professional people, young people, farmers, women, intellectual leaders, workers. RFE's jazz and popular music programs are a great favorite with East European youth. It symbolizes freedom of expression and the Western way of life they so admire. The private nature of RFE adds immeasurably to its effectiveness. East Europeans know that the American people, through their generous contributions, make possible RFE's broadcasts. RFE's audiences consider Radio Free Europe as their radio, a radio station they themselves would establish if their communist rulers would allow it. Radio Free Europe is, as one of its founders, Lucius D. Clay, said, a different, broader voice. A voice of the free people, a radio which would not speak the words of government, but would speak to each country behind the Iron Curtain in its own language and from the throats of its own leaders who had fled for their lives because of their beliefs in freedom. RFE's 31 transmitters, located in West Germany and Portugal, broadcast total programming, everything from the latest music fad to hard news. Every week, RFE broadcasts over 500 program hours to East Europe, twice as much as all other free world stations combined. Radio Free Europe has received thousands of letters from behind the Iron Curtain, letters eloquently testifying to the popularity and effectiveness of RFE. From Romania,
Radio Free Europe maintains the people's morale, especially of those who become skeptical and disillusioned.
From Czechoslovakia,
I am convinced that Radio Free Europe is the most effective opponent of communism in Czechoslovakia. RFE is the moral leader in our common struggle against the present policy in Prague.
From Bulgaria,
from Radio Free Europe, we Bulgarians gain courage and faith in the future, and as long as it exists, we can be confident that we have not been forgotten and that all is not lost.
A student from Hungary.
I am and have been for 5 years a regular listener to RFE's Teenage Party. In our town, 75 or 80% of the young people listen to this program, which is the most popular program in Hungary.
A mother from Poland.
RFE's programs are welcomed by all who miss freedom.
Communist officials themselves give convincing testimony to Radio Free Europe's effectiveness by their frequent protests and public statements. A leading Hungarian party official delivered this warning against RFE at a communist labor conference.
American imperialism is also turning over in its mind aggressive plans concerning Europe. Everything, including radio stations, and first of all, Radio Free Europe, is now being subordinated to a policy aimed at the internal collapse of the communist countries. We have to fight this new imperialistic tactic.
Communist leaders have every right to fear the truth. Since 1950, RFE's broadcasts have aided the people's efforts to force changes. East Europe is breaking away from Soviet control. There is more travel and tourism. There's more attention to consumer needs, more trade with the West, cultural exchanges, and even small beginnings of free expression. Also, the communist regimes are planning reorganizations of their economic systems along lines closer to Western nations. In effect, they are saying that communism doesn't work. Central control over every phase of production and marketing has failed. It is not meeting the needs of the people or the state. Today in East Europe, you can hear such phrases as pay incentives, profits, interest rates, and supply and demand. Phrases which are certainly not part of the communist lexicon. This trend in East Europe is one which Radio Free Europe has been encouraging, but it is only the first step on a long road to freedom. There are many roadblocks in the way. Communist regimes still hold a monopoly of power. The Soviet Union still has a dominant influence in East Europe. The small freedoms granted the people still can be taken away. The real work is ahead. Radio Free Europe, with your support, can continue in its people-to-people mission, helping East Europeans help themselves become equal partners in the community of European nations, nations working together toward common interests and goals. Radio Free Europe allows the people to hear both sides of an issue and to question the information they receive in the government-controlled media. Radio Free Europe is truly their window to the West, and it is our window through which we can help the people there work the changes they seek and even influence changes in the Soviet Union itself. Only when governments derive their power from the people and use it with the consent of the people can we approach world peace.